look at reaching out, because reaching out is also strength. Working with a community is your strength.
Absolutely.
And once they recognize the value of that, life becomes a lot better.
Absolutely.
And let's hope that more people reach out for help and it's not considered a weakness.
Absolutely.
We need to break the myth.
Absolutely, Amendra. Hello. So today we are here with Amendra, formerly known as Harin, a rock star in my eyes. Among his many accolades, a retired young man, correct me if I'm getting it wrong, huh? And a very modest, not a high achiever, Lou. Right.
Facts. Absolute facts, Hans. As
Okay.
true as it comes.
All right, okay. Now, I want to dive straight in, Amendra,
Yeah.
to why Kalyana, because I just want to set that context.
Sure.
And then we'll have a chat.
Okay. Very simple. Hans, all my life, sport has been my go-to in terms of release from a very young age. And I love sport, and I was coming out of a gym 7 years ago. Walking out, suddenly I realized if I couldn't exercise, physically do stuff, am I mentally prepared? And the answer was no. And then I had met this young yoga lady who was an Indian Malaysian who became my co-founder, and I shared the story and I said, look, I want to find the tools for the mind. I want to create a mind gym. We got 38 people together and we discussed the subject of what are the tools for the mind. And Kalyana today, through the website, looks at all of the alternative therapies for mental well-being, because mental well-being is needed for everyone on the planet.
Let's talk a little bit about the men who come to you. You've been providing this service for a while now, albeit anecdotal. What are you seeing in terms of our men? What are you seeing?
Still, very limited. I would say 90-10 in favor of the ladies and children reaching out for help. So that's been the one area that I want to really crack, and I had spoken to you multiple times over the years about
So you're saying 90-10. So only around 10% of your
clientele who reach out through the hotline or through connections are men.
And what do you see there, Amendra? Why are they reaching out?
I think the why are they reaching
Yeah,
out?
why are they reaching out? What's the
I
catalyst?
think the catalyst for some of the men to reach out is this: they probably are beginning to see a lot on the social media about the discussion on mental well-being. And I think some of those are beginning to slowly sleep into the mindset. And some of us also are talking about it. And some of us who are in the corporate world, reaching out also helps and enables young men to feel more confident of reaching for help.
In your opinion, what would be the primary drivers of pressure within a corporate context? Now, this is a world that you stride. Let's put your modesty aside. This is a world that you stride among different stages. So you observe, you know. So what are you seeing as the pressures that young men within the corporate world experience?
So basically, if you look back at 40 years ago when I joined Ernst & Young as a young 19-year-old or 20-year-old, basically at that time, we men were considered breadwinners. A majority of us were taught that, we needed to eke out a living, get married, have a family, and generally be the provider. That was the norm. 40 years later, Hans, it's shifting a little bit. But still, I think it still affects the men, where there is a pressure.
That expectation.
That expectation is still very much a view. And as a result of that, it creates a subconscious pressure. And you strive to achieve. It's like in sport, right? We strive to achieve. We push ourselves beyond exhaustion. You have played sport, I have played sport, right? When you're in that pressure cooker situation, we'll push ourselves to the limit and crack afterwards. Right? All those injuries manifest after the game.
Yeah. So in this mental gym that is Kalyana, this mind gym that is Kalyana, what would you say are the building blocks, if you like, that can support people undergoing these pressures, like the pressure to provide,
Yeah.
which is significant.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So the way we have done it, Hans, is to actually look at all of the alternative therapies out there.
Okay.
Because each of us guys and women will have different things that work for us. We are very familiar with yoga meditation. But how many of us know about art therapy, about journaling, about sound healing, music therapy? So my view was these are the things that need to be brought to the public notice.
Absolutely.
And then I'm pretty confident that every one of us will have something that works.
No, so it's human joy. What you're trying to build is human joy.
Absolutely, and something that is not detrimental to us in terms of a go-to.
What would you see as the barrier, if you like, for men to access that, to go to art therapy or to go and sort of sink yourself, if you like, into that music therapy experience? Is there something preventing men? Do you see more women than men taking that up?
At the moment, yes.
Yeah.
See, again, today, these expectations are driving a lot of the men's
So the expectation to provide,
to provide.
the expectation to
To
what?
maintain, not
look
to-
like someone?
Not only look like someone, I think it's about being strong,
Okay.
right? It's about
That
saying-
idea of strength.
about strength. It's
Character.
about character.
Yes.
It's about not, actually crying, for example.
Yeah, that's-
Somebody asked me, one of the ladies at Kalyana, so when did you last cry?
Yeah.
And I had to think back.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, maybe about 3.5 years ago when
I
my
teared
brother
up a
died.
little.
I said, my
darling.
brother died, and I think my sister died 6 months later, and I think, yes, I did shed a lot more than a
Well,
tear.
Anand,
Rarely. We are used to suppressing our emotions. And that's one of the reasons I myself, who have an autoimmune condition 9 years ago, I firmly believe it is because we suppress. And this is what we try. And coming back to your question, so the men feel this need to show that character, and crying is considered a weakness, a woman's thing. So we are now breaking those shackles because
How?
I think by the communication awareness creation,
Right.
I think people are unaware
Right.
that there are all of these types of things
Yes.
that are out there which can support you in your mental well-being journey. And the whole objective of Kalyana is to bring to the fore some of these practices so that then one chooses what one works for. For me, it was sport and still is, right? Unfortunately, you and I both know that under pressure, it's substance abuse, it's porn, it's sex, temporary pleasures that men may seek. So in those situations, what we are trying to provide is the alternatives that can provide you with the necessary support, and it can probably enable people to function very well in what they do without having to go into substance abuse or other sorts of things that can be addictive in nature, which can be damaging domestically. One of my biggest challenges, and why I want to help the men, is because there is so much domestic abuse. As in everything you start, Hans, it takes time.
of course.
The first 3 to 5 to 6 years could be
Yeah.
slow.
Yes.
But like in anything, once it starts creating momentum, you will see a sea change.
Let's talk a little about mental health education or the lack of it in our schools. Let's go there.
Yeah.
What has been your experience in sort of trying to have these mental health conversations within the schools, arguably where it is required,
Yeah.
given what we see happening,
Yeah.
right? And across the board, this is not a Colombo problem.
Yeah.
The mental health of our children, our young people in schools is under threat.
Correct.
So what do you see in terms of making some headway there?
Yeah. So the positive news is
Yeah.
I know 3 women's schools, 2 international schools, and a boys' school, the school you went to, basically, who have tried to create an environment to provide some form of counseling or access to a practitioner. But unfortunately, I still believe that the management, the authorities are still somewhat skeptical or very nervous to bring in the subject of mental health.
Do you think that is still the case?
I think there is still an issue here because the parents today's need to measure success on material success is causing enormous problems. We have seen it happen in sport, Hans. It's a huge challenge in schools. And today that is not still being addressed at the level I would like to. challenge we're having is to get the practitioners' hands. Our biggest challenge is the resource base. The human resources available
Yeah.
to provide proper counseling and psychological support is still minimal. It's a space that we're beginning to see young people get into, but you need another 10 years before you actually have substance to be able to spread them across the community, both not only in Colombo, but even outside Colombo.
Do we have a government setup that is helpful?
Well, I think the government service didn't have a psychologist in it for till about 6 years ago. We had only psychiatrists, so they were medicine driven. But today you have occupational therapy, you have a few more psychologists, and more of the psychiatrists at least are willing to listen to
Yes.
the value of counseling and psychological support.
Yes.
But still it's domain, it's territory, right? So Sri Lanka does get challenged. Some people are not willing to embrace it. But my view is we have to be with it, stick with it. Consistent messaging would eventually, I think, break through that.
What would you envision for young children? What would you envision for young children? What would you say in terms of learning mental health skills? What would the basics be?
The basics to me is parents,
Right.
teachers. Because that's the example, Hans. Children learn from example.
Absolutely. Learned behavior, standard.
Learned behavior. So what I'm
Modeling
saying is
behavior.
what you and I, sweet words, wonderful conversations, mean nothing if we don't practice it. And one of the reasons I never want to get on too many public forums is we are all learning along the way. We are still far from being able to say we know how to handle life. We don't.
No, who knows?
Exactly. But the issue is being a parent, the responsibility of bringing another human being to the planet needs to be understood. And I think the real route is to get the teachers, and my focus in my own school is to try and enable that. And I'm fortunately seeing a lot of receptivity towards it. And I hope in 2026 that we can start the program. But the child spends 7 hours, 6 hours a day, 250 days of the year for 15 years in a school. They have more good quality time with the teachers than with your parents. What are teachers paid? How are they looked at?
What's your cricket budget?
Huge. Absolutely. Our coaches.
What's your rugby budget?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the prioritization, Hans, is critical because for us to enable change, parents and teachers need to start living what they're telling their children, and the children will pick the vibes. They will see what it is. We've all learned from our parents as well.
What to do and what not to do.
What to do, what not to do. Some of the financial stuff that I have picked up was my mother. The discipline she acquired to maintain a family of its 7 children. I'm the youngest of 7. During the hard times of the 70s when my own father was sick, she learned to manage the budget. And what an example she provided us. I grew up with a balance sheet which was negative at the age of 26 when I went to Bahrain. I had SIMA and chartered, but I had a negative balance sheet of a plus 200,000 liability. And the first thing and the reason I went to Bahrain was because I had to pay the debt back to my brother who funded me. He was funded by my elder brother. And that was the family thing because my father couldn't afford to provide the funding. And we went, we paid that. And I keep telling young people, remember at 25, you have 40 years of work ahead of you. Your salaries are going to increase, you're going to generate more money. Don't make that a priority. You need money. I'm not discounting that. We all need it. Having a little enables us to do a lot of things. But if we prioritize it, we could end up losing the meaning of life and living well. The choice of my retiring at 52 was because I felt that I had more to do in my life, which I had probably missed out as a youngster.
Would that be something that you advocate for? Early retirement? Form a sort of corporate setup?
Well, it's a people laugh when I say I'm retired, right? Because I'm probably busier than I was when I was working.
Okay.
The difference is that it's not retirement in the conventional way of sitting at home on a chair reading a book or reading a paper and wondering what to do next.
Yeah.
It is about doing things you love doing.
Exactly.
And that is liberating.
And you never retire from that.
You never retire. Today at
Yeah.
11:30, I'm
Yeah.
having a coffee with you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's marvelous.
Yeah.
But again, you need to make certain commitments to enable that to happen. Because if you have children, then there is a little bit more responsibility and retirement might have to be pushed back a little bit. So choices that we make do make a difference in how we live our lives.
So when the pace is frantic and mothers, fathers, they are running at this pace, trying to do everything. And if we are then talking about, okay, let's give them some balance, what are the concrete steps they can take? What can they do to find that balance?
Yeah, so Hans, I think we touched on it in the areas of alternative therapies. So, what you have to probably consider doing is that between husband and wife, you need to give yourself the space.
What does that mean?
And that space means that every day there is a particular time that is allocated for each of the partners to be with themselves, do what they like to do. Because in order to give, you also need to be nourished. And if you don't provide that,
Put man cave vibe bega.
for the man cave vibe ekak for the man, but it's also true for the woman.
Correct.
Because I think the woman needs to have her own company. So whether it's a once a week gatherings or once in 2 week gatherings, and the daily practice to me, Hans, is more important. Whether it be 10-15 minutes a day, where you look at the alternative therapies, the music, the journaling, whatever agonies you go through in the office, the difficulties and challenges, the ability to express that is a release. And we all know that a 5-minute conversation with a friend on a major issue provides us enormous relief.
Yes.
When you have challenges and you share it, you feel you're not alone. There is a lot of statistics. I have now very many friends whose children are moving away and they have lost their connection. They are two strangers. The children kept them together for a common purpose, but they are two strangers. And it's hard. So this is why for burnout, when you talk about the subject of stress and burnout, it means we are not handling things sensibly,
Out of balance.
out of balance. So what you need to bring back into the balance is, one is if you're aware, recognizing that you are out of balance is the first thing to do, right? Because if you don't recognize you have a problem, there's no solution.
So very Socratic, know thyself.
It is absolutely the fundamental reason, and I hope the men that watch this will look at reaching out, because reaching out is also strength. Working with a community is your strength.
Absolutely.
And once they recognize the value of that, life becomes a lot better.
Absolutely.
And let's hope that more people reach out for help and it's not considered a weakness. We
Absolutely.
need to break the myth.
Absolutely, Amen. In terms of, let's move back to the sort of corporate space. If we have a sort of balanced approach to how we value what success is,
Yes.
what would that be? Because it's a balance, no? I mean, I walk a tightrope every morning. So do you,
So, yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
We are on this side or on this side.
Yeah.
Dryden says, thin partitions do divide sanity and insanity, right?
Absolutely.
We know that.
Firmly believe it, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, what would your wisdom be for walking that balance in terms of success?
Hans, these are very personal questions, is the way I
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
Because ultimately what I can do is to share my own experience
Yes.
and how they may want to look at it.
Yes.
The issue is, if you want to succeed in sport and become number one, there is a massive sacrifice you make. You play the game 16 hours a day, 360 days of the Michael Phelps was one of them, right? So in the workspace, again, you have to make these choices. If I want to be the head of the department, if I want to aspire to be the chief executive, there's only one of them in a company. It can be 100,000 employees, but there's only one CEO, right? So if you want to get there, there is going to be a price to be paid. So the dividing line is a choice that you make, Hans, whether man, woman, or child. And I think the wisdom that I carry is that I enjoy a lot of different things in my life, and I realized I wasn't willing to give up all of them to achieve one. So I'm a great jack of all trades, master of none. And it took me a long time to be happy to be Jack, because the world wanted specialist, legacy, whatever. And as I shared with you, working at the nanotechnology company was really revealing, because a nanoparticle is 1 billionth the size of a meter. And my aspiration is to be a nanoparticle. Neither seen nor heard, but still effective. That's really...
Nothing more than a quark.
Absolutely. So the universe is huge, but we still seem insignificant but have an impact, right? That's the story. And I think you need, in the corporate world, determine what is it you want. If you choose to work for a big company and you expect a big salary, there are prices you pay for that. If you value your leisure, there are other jobs that offer you that.
Or you value your family and the time that you spend with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that choice is something that I don't want to tell people, but I can share with them to reflect. And I firmly believe, man or woman, we have to spend time reflecting on ourselves.
I think reflecting on ourselves and also reflecting on the fact that we need human relationships.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the issues with, for example, the addiction space of porn, if you like, is the more pornography you watch, the less ejaculate you have for a real relationship, to put it crudely.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So we have a situation here where human relationships, or the need for those human relationships, the fear to take a risk, to risk the rejection, like you ask a girl out for a cup of coffee, to risk that rejection. You know, we were all scared
yes,
that
of
first
course,
time. No, you remember,
of
we were
course, of
nervous.
course. Absolutely,
Nervous. You know, we
absolutely.
had all these little devices like a card or a rose, or just to try and bridge that gap, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
that's a concern now that is coming out in terms of data,
Right.
where more and more young men are sitting at home and not getting out, not taking those risks.
Correct.
And are being sequestered like that. And what the big companies are doing is keeping them there, right? For you use Facebook.
Yes, I do.
You go for 10 minutes and then how long?
No,
You're good.
I'm good as in I get my reading material sometimes from that.
Okay. How long do you spend on it?
45 minutes. But there was a very interesting conversation about this, Hans. If I spend 45 minutes reading every day,
Yeah.
a lot of people wouldn't have a problem with that.
Right. Why
If I use my Facebook as a tool for reading 45 minutes, it may not be such a bad thing. So it's the use of the device, the use of the tool that matters most.
How do you stop at 45 minutes? You have a timer?
No, I don't need it.
Internal?
Absolutely internal.
Okay.
Wind down
Okay.
in the evening,
Okay.
maybe 20 minutes.
Okay.
May not be 45 actually, to be very honest. It might be 15, 20 minutes. But I'm not compulsive because I have such a busy day that I don't feel the need to fill my day just scrolling.
Okay.
Right? I don't have the luxury of
So
it.
is it part of your routine now?
Not really.
Okay.
I try to avoid too many routines,
Okay.
other than probably,
Waking up.
One day you wouldn't, right? Yes, so I'm waking up. There are certain practices I put into place, like I talked about the alternative therapies, which I do morning and night, for example, and that has become somewhat a routine. And I feel that that's something that grounds me. And
Tell us about it.
Well, the thing is, I don't want to bring in any spiritual part to it, but
No need.
to be very honest, I think there's a universal frequency that we all operate from. And I think gratitude, genuinely feeling appreciative of what I have benefited from in life, is something I feel strongly about. And for me, spending a few minutes at the end of a day, or as I wake up in the morning, is absolutely powerful. And that's practice that I started since I fell sick maybe 9 years ago. Probably started it 2 years after that. But believe me, it's the best part of my day. It is the most amazing part of the day. Because if you look at our lives, Hans, why do we enjoy what we are enjoying? The world, most of them are not. So if we don't appreciate that we have been given this opportunity for whatever reason, which you and I don't understand, that needs to be shared. That's what we are all about. It's about giving as against taking, serving. Being in positions of authority means you're there for serving, not to be served. That has been my philosophy.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Amendra. How that close?
Well, that name change, you know the story, right? So, yes, I've shared the story as to how that name change happened. But that's exactly right. It's much more calming than Harin. And it's my second name as well. So,
Okay. So on that, thank you.
pleasure.
And continue to be you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Enjoy the conversation as usual.
Yeah.
Love having this, and we'll have a longer conversation after this.
Yeah.